You're listening to the Breakeven Brothers podcast, a show by two brothers shooting the breeze about business, finance, technology, and everything in between. All views and opinions expressed are solely our own and not affiliated with any third party. Hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, leave us a review and drop a like. See you there. All right. It is episode 15 of the Breakeven Brothers podcast. Bradley, how are you doing?
Doing absolutely fantastic. It's currently Sunday. Been a pretty busy week, but busy in a good way, and tons of AI updates. So I've been dying to just have some downtime to play around with things. But yeah, all things considered,
Nice.
pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, good. Super busy for sure. Super busy with my regular 9 to 5. So not like pulling like extra long hours. I think I'm kind of past the point in my career where I feel like I want to do that, but just busy. From the moment I log on to the moment I get off. So there's been a lot of news and stuff that's happened that we'll talk about here, and new things that are getting launched. But I haven't been able to really dig in and kind of play around as much as I would like. But I'll make up for that here in the coming weeks once things quiet down at work.
It's like that time, like New Year comes around, people had a lot of goals for last year. You're setting up goals for this year. And I think at work, everything is starting to pick up again, where people have some ambitious goals for the quarter, for the half. And we're getting to that point where I also feel the same, like busy 9 to 5, like fully booked and focused. And it's good in a way that I like what I'm doing. It's very fun, but it's also like less time to, like, after work, I feel like, less time to kind of play around with things because I have less energy. I know we talked about it in the previous podcast of getting home at like 5:30, getting to like other activities like post work. But yeah, I think it's that time of year where people are picking up again. People are back from vacation. Definitely a little bit more busy. So you got to be mindful of spending your energy.
Well, and I think too, especially, like I've been trying to get better sleep. I talked about that in the last podcast, and like I've been like trying to get to bed on time. Where I think before, I'd kind of, grunt through things and like work on things late at night. And at the end of the day, I felt like after too much of doing that, like you just become ineffective, and like the diminishing returns you get on like trying to work hard on something when you're like running out of steam. It just doesn't really work, especially I think as you get older. That's just what I've noticed in my own experience. And also too, it's like what I'm really trying to do this year, like consciously, is like focus on like what's in front of me, and I think it's easy to convince yourself that like you need to be doing all these different things, and like once you're done with this thing, and then you got to go do the next thing. And it's like sometimes you need to just simplify, focus on what's in front of you, worry about the rest of the stuff later, but don't like try and solve 3 problems at once. And I think you get better quality of work on like the thing that you're doing in that time. So that's what I've been trying to do. And I think, so being busy at work, it's like I'm just trying to do the thing that's in front of me. And then once like I'm done with work, it's like, okay, I need to like just pause. Sometimes I do some stuff on the side, just as far as like working on, we talked last time about like coding a little like chat agent, so those things are fun. But then too, it's like I need to like work out, I need to make some dinner, and then I need to read a book and go to bed. So it's like sometimes simplifying things is nice, and keeps your focus a bit more than trying to do everything at once.
Yeah, I think Huberman came out with a podcast recently talking about the usual health guru stuff, but he came out with I think a 30-minute focused episode talking about hey, you don't have to listen to my like 3-4 hour podcast, but you can listen to a 30-minute version about like focus and like deep work. And I think he mentioned, I don't know if it's exactly correct, but like a very intense focus session, maybe 90 minutes before noon, and like another deep focus session in the afternoon. But after that 90-minute session, your brain is like pretty taxed and you don't get as much value out of it. But if you can get your highest priority work done within that 90 minutes, like that's the biggest bang for your buck. And I've tried to do that. I notice when I come into the office in the morning, as long as I'm not distracted by any people or like having too many things in front of me, if I just have one thing and I get to work on it and I'm like energized by, waking up and having that large pocket of energy, get a lot of stuff done. I think the hard part is just choosing, one, the right thing to work on, and two, not being distracted within that 90 minutes. Because if you're dialed in, like headphones on, no one's interrupting you, like maybe you don't check Slack that often, you can get a ton of stuff done. Like I've been trying to reduce distractions and like reduce meetings, all those things that get in the way for like a deep productivity session. So if your calendar's filled, maybe a little bit harder for you, but a suggestion of just like 90-minute block and just get stuff done, because other than that you have gaps here and there and it doesn't feel as productive, which sucks.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that I actually been thinking about. And this is funny that you're bringing it up too. Is like the concept of like deep work versus like I think the flip side of that is called I think they call it like grease the groove. I think that's used like in like a
Hmm.
physical sense. I'm not sure if you've heard that phrase before.
Hmm.
Basically, like grease the groove is like where it's like instead of going to the gym for an hour and like working out your muscles and like just obliterating your muscles, breaking them down so that way when they repair they get stronger. That's what conventional weightlifting is about, right? But instead of doing that, like just every day, a couple times a day, you walk by a pull-up bar and you just do like 2 or 3 pull-ups, and like that supposedly like grease the groove keeps the strength there. It doesn't like tax your body too much, but you still get the strength benefits of it. I'm not, I don't know the science behind it, but like that's just the philosophy. And I was thinking about that in the context of work because it's like, how long can you maintain like a deep, dedicated focus on something? Because I think I used to be more the opinion of like, give me like 4 or 5 hours, like put me in like a dark room and like let me just go, and like it's like the Dragon Ball Z, it's like the hyperbolic time chamber, it's like let me go in there and I'll come back out
I'll
with a
get
bunch of
everything
stuff
done.
done. Yeah, but I think now I don't know if I feel the same way, or maybe I've changed because sometimes I feel like, give me those 30, 60-minute increments. Then let me
Hmm.
go like take a break and go walk and get something from the kitchen and like
Hmm.
go sit outside in my patio for like 10 minutes and then go back and start working. Like those little intermittent breaks or like take a walk outside, for 10 minutes. I think they kind of keep me a bit more productive, honestly, than like sitting there for 4 hours and like forcing myself to like get through the things. And I don't think that's distraction. I think that's kind of, I hadn't heard that Huberman topic, but that seems like kind of what he's saying. It's like you only have a limited amount of time for your focus, then you need to reset or just take a break and come back to it.
Yeah, I think I've tried doing those like longer sessions too, and I think the problem that I run into is there are some things like building a split my expenses that there's just like a really hard problem, and it feels meant to like 90 minutes won't give me enough to get it fully done, and it feels like one of those things that I need to just get it done in a chunk of time. Maybe it's 3 hours, maybe it's 4 hours, and those are kind of the problem issues I have with working like nights and weekends on split my expenses is I have a lot of small problems, and I get to those within like a 90-minute focus period or 60 minutes, even that. But the harder problems, they really make me think. And I don't want to have focused work and break it up in a sense that I lose context. Because so much happens in life. If I work on something on Monday and I pick it up on Friday, definitely a little bit more fuzzy. Like I'd rather just get it all done, make it perfect, tie it up. And so I think I'm making good progress on SME, specifically with a mobile app recently. But there are some kind of large items that I've yet to crack where I can find the time and how best to make that happen where I'm not locked in a dungeon for 4 hours or 5 hours. Like I can make it happen on the weekend, but I'm not even sure that's the right way to do it and if that'll be like the best bang for my buck. So I have been making good progress there, but not necessarily on some big ticket items I just want to finish off. So hopefully in the coming weekends I'll try to figure out what that looks like. But yeah, I think deep work is definitely something that matters a lot, like having focus time. My manager at PayPal is really into deep work, like read a bunch of books on it, tried to make sure we had the time and like priorities to do it. And if you're at a company that has tons of meetings, like either stacking those meetings or being cognizant of distraction free time. When I worked at Meta, they had an automatic focus time. So if you're coding like in Visual Studio Code, your like Slack status, like the messenger app internally, would flip to like a focus mode. And so when you got messages, it wouldn't even notify you, which is really nice because if you're in that deep 90-minute phase, you don't need to go manually say, don't message me. It would like kick in after a certain length in the IDE. And now you're like in deep focus mode. So I kind of like that approach. As long as you're getting stuff done, like, who's to say otherwise?
Yeah, totally. I've a newer thing I've done. This is more of like a 2025 thing. It's not specifically like a resolution, but just on that focus, or on that topic of focus, is basically like during the weekdays, I just have like my phone auto switch to like I think it's called like a work mode. You can name it whatever you want, but basically it's like it disables notifications. I think I did it from like 7 a.m. to like 6 p.m. or something like that. And I only get notifications like from my wife, just in case it's an emergency or something like that. And then like my ring because like I want to see if someone's at my door, and then like my credit card notifications because I want to see if I'm buying something or someone's using my
Yeah.
card they shouldn't be. But like other than that, I don't get any notifications. Like no Slack, no email, it's just that's just on my phone, so I still get my notifications like on my work laptop, obviously. But just it kind of removes that like itch of being like, oh, who texted me or who, put a message out there, who emailed me,
Mm.
and it just helps a little bit, trying to eliminate those kinds of distractions. So yeah, those focus modes I think are pretty good. So far it's been a nice development or incorporation in my routine.
Yeah, I think the person who wrote or who writes a lot of the content or like literature on that is Cal Newport. I was just looking him up,
Hmm.
like deep work, and very interesting if you're into that. Uh, I saw a tweet probably 2 weeks ago talking about monk mode. I was just looking it up while you're speaking, and it's some startup. I think it was like Lindy AI. They essentially have this label that's like deep focus mode for an engineer, in which they're working on something that's like extremely high priority for the next 2 weeks, and they call it like monk mode or something. And what that means is this person like doesn't have to respond to any messages, emails, attend any meetings. It's like they're in their own silo and manage their time on their own and just like get shit done, which I found kind of interesting. Like, I can't tell you many times in my life. I mean, I guess when I worked for myself, I was a little bit like that, but that was unique, in which like I've worked for a company and had the ultimate discretion on where to spend my time and like not have to deal with like the quote unquote other stuff. But it sounds interesting. Would love to give that a run through and see if like me being in full control of my time, not having to worry about other things, like if that would be a huge productivity win, or like I kind of miss some of the other things, or not enjoy it as I expect. 'Cause it sounds like you're focused but also super busy. Like taking
Hmm.
a break every few hours maybe is not allowed in a monk mode, but kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting naming convention, like monk mode. I
Yeah,
wonder if like what the monks would actually think about that. Be like, why are
yeah,
you adopting our our name? Like, do you want to be a monk?
yeah.
Yeah,
One
that's
thing
funny.
while you're chatting about notifications, I recently added push notifications to Split My Expenses React Native app, and if you're familiar with push notifications, for anyone listening, it's a huge pain in the ass. Apple makes it so difficult to set up from end to end to get push notifications delivered. But if you look at Split My Expenses feature request board, so today I have like a feature request board where users can come in and comment on things. Notifications, I think, is within the top 5, upvoted by at least 30 or 40 users. So I spent at least 6 hours trying to scaffold out the infrastructure to, one, hook up with Apple systems, and two, on my code, essentially send a notification when an expense is created, a payment is created, a group is created, all these kind of state changes within Split My Expenses. It's detecting those changes and then delivering a push notification to the relevant users with the right content. And I built this probably 2 weeks ago, and I was dying for one of my friends to add me to an expense because I'm the only one in this system. It's kind of a closed door system, me to test it just for now. The mobile app is not out, but I have it on my phone. And just yesterday, my friend added me to an expense. It was like a dinner with 6 people or 7 people, and he added me, and I tested it. I got the notification in. I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome, because it was so much effort to get it to work. And I think it'll drive a lot of engagement because notifications of, something is happening. I have email, it works, but the push notifications with a native app is like 10 times better. And so I struggled through it. I got the implementation done and was just like ready for a notification to get delivered to my device. And it finally happened yesterday. And the satisfaction was super high. I was like, this is going to be sick. I can't wait till I release this to the general public. But that feature alone, push notifications, is going to drive tons and tons of engagement of like, hey, go add your expenses. Hey, go settle up in the group. Like, there's so many notifications. I think I have 12 or 13 right now that I've added. And it's probably it for a launch, but they're super impactful, and I'm really excited to like get those out the door. And once the app is finally out, then everyone will get them, of course, and I think it'll be a huge win. So
Hmm.
yeah, something I want to share, because I worked on notifications at PayPal, enabled notifications there for the business app, and then doing it on my own for Chatty Butler, and then finally doing it again for Split My Expenses. And each time, huge pain in the ass, and so much effort with certificates and going through Apple's kind of setup. Once you get it done, it's like the code you never touch. Like you do it and you just hope to never ever touch that again.
Mm. That's cool. That's cool to hear how much of a pain it is because I think, for me, just as a regular consumer, I wouldn't know that they were such a pain to deal with. Like it just seems like on the engineering side, it just seems like
Hmm.
that wouldn't be of all things that, go into an application. It just seems like that would be just a quick add-on. But it's interesting to hear that you have to get certificates, and that Apple makes it kind of a chore to do.
Yeah,
You wouldn't
it's
have
an
guessed that.
absolute chore. Yeah. And then one other thing I added to SME recently was more frequent database backups. I won't go too deep into this, but previously I was doing once a day and I logged into my Amazon account and I back up to S3, which is their storage kind of like API or product. And I think I had, I don't know, maybe like 2 gigabytes total of backups. I think each backup right now is roughly like 50 gigabytes. Sorry, that didn't make any sense. 50 megabytes, sorry. 50 megabytes for each backup. And I think I had like 2 gigabytes total. And the TLDR is like the backup strategy is once a day and we retain like 4 weeks worth and we start expiring old backups. And it popped in my head with more users now, I think I should back up more often. So this means if I had a critical bug that I deployed some code and something goofed up and I lost like some database state was corrupted, my next backup would be roughly like, 12 to 24 hours ago. And I thought, I don't make much money at all from SME, but the pain of like losing even free users or like losing their trust of, hey, I just added 14 expenses on my trip. I lost all my data because Brad had a bug and therefore he rolled back to like the previous day and I lost all that. So I upped it to actually every 2 hours, I think. And when I looked at my S3 recently, I think it went from like 2 gigabytes stored to 12 gigabytes. I think the price was maybe, I don't know, like 5 cents to like 30 cents. And I think it'll roughly stay under 15 gigabytes. Like it's very, very cheap. My database will keep growing. So each backup will get more expensive. But for it to cost me like $5 a month, I'd have to have tons of data. And so I just
Hmm.
realized at the end of the day, I'd rather have the security and safety versus like spending 3 cents versus like under $5. Like this is like a no-brainer and my server is beefy enough to do backups more continuously without affecting like user experience. So I turn that on and yeah, just a little bit more safer. I get Slack notifications on every backup, so every 2 hours I get a ping on my phone, which I will mute because I used to get it once a day, which was like, oh, it worked. And now I'm like, yeah, of course it worked. Every 2 hours I'm getting spammed by my own software. So yeah,
Yeah.
those are things I've been working on recently is push notifications and more database backups. And that one's more for safety and security. But at the end of the day, that's like peace of mind is honestly super valuable.
Yeah. Well, and it's those things that, business continuity plans. Like I've worked at places, there's one place in particular that I've worked that really values that. And like business continuity plan, at least how I view it is like, what happens when like, crap hits the fan,
Hmm.
like, and it goes through any kind of different scenario. Like if our servers go down, like what's the backup? Like if a facility is attacked, like what's the backup? Like if we lose all these records, and like just having a plan and like a series of steps that you think you're going to do, I think it's a very mature thing for like a company to do, and you're taking care ultimately of your customers that way. And yeah, it might not be a hot new feature, but I think people want to know that their data is being held in good hands, and storage space is so cheap, you know what I mean? Like
It
it's
is,
like
yeah.
why not just do that, and just it's so like cost efficient to just add a couple more per day or whatever.
Yeah, it
And
was super cheap.
yeah, one quick thing on the notifications, then we can move on off that topic. But we both last episode talked about our Duolingo streaks and what we're
Oh,
doing, and
yeah.
I have to say, hands down, the most passive aggressive notification
I agree.
system. Yeah, they are. I mean, they kind of meme into it now. Like there's a whole like they put out like albums on Spotify where it's like and there's like songs where it's like they're joking about how like if you don't do your Korean lesson, they're going to break your knees, so they lean into like how ridiculous their notifications are. But yeah, I just thought of that
Yeah,
while we were
I
talking
get
about
those
those.
notifications too. Like if I don't complete the lesson in the day, it's like, hey, your time is running out. Hey, are you sure? Sad face, sad face. I'm like, I would
Yeah.
love to do this for my own app, but I don't exist in a category to be used every day. But their playbook for notification delivery and like almost self guilt is
Hmm.
incredible. And you can take a look at their stock. Like if you look up Duolingo stock, they are doing quite well because they've mastered monetization and subscriptions. And I think notifications and like user experience feelings where you want to
Hmm.
do it, they know you want to do it, but you might not have time, but they just try to squeeze in with a notification at the right time. And I'm sure they have
Yeah.
tons of engineers working on machine learning and AI to figure out notification delivery time because that's like a big sentiment is like if Bradley does the lesson at 8 p.m. every day, we're going to send notification at 7:30 and say, hey, it's probably time. They're not sending it
Hmm.
randomly. They're thinking deeply about that. But yeah, it's a interesting area and very valuable.
Yeah, I even have the tile. You know how you can have like tiles
Oh, the
on your
widget?
iPhone? Yeah, the widget.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have the little Duolingo widget, and I notice like it changes throughout the day. So like in the morning, it
Yeah.
just has like a time to practice. But then if last night I didn't do it till like 11:30 at night, and like when I went to it, the widget was like an angry like bird.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the
Yeah.
angry duo bird. I was just like, man, this is
They changed
crazy.
the app icon too. I think it's the same thing where they
Hmm.
literally pull all the levers that Apple tries or like
Yeah.
allows you, and they do it in a way that is like very growth hacky, but kind of
Hmm.
interesting too. It's not like over the top. I'm going to uninstall. It's like they're pushing you in a way that makes you feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's in good fun too. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
you know, people that hopefully don't take it too seriously. But
yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
And
Awesome.
on your work, I know you texted me about kind of starting on the chat operator kind of phone call thing we had talked
Hmm.
about last time. Any updates to share on that?
Yeah. Wow. I just looked at Duolingo stock, and yeah, you're right. They are killing
Yeah,
it.
they're doing quite
Good for
well.
them. Yeah, good for them. That's cool. I think they're based out of Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly, which is not a very like common tech hub. Anywho, yeah. So originally I built that with Flask, you know, and I think I had talked about how I was using Chat and like Anthropic or Claude Sonnet to give me some of the code. And then so once I kind of had it to a place where I wanted to make it a bit more I don't want to say legit because it's still very much just like an idea, but just a bit more robust and familiar. I switched it over to Django. And so what was trying to do, and this is a very classic Bennettism. So just bear with me as I walk through this. What I was trying to do is I said, okay, I want the backend to be something I know because like you need to have some familiarity, otherwise you're just not going to be able to like you are an engineer, so like you don't have, or maybe you might have something similar if you go into a whole different like language that you're not familiar with. But like you can try new things, but like if you don't know kind of what's going on, like you're not going to be able to get very far.
Hmm.
And I don't want to spend much time learning. So I was like, I'm going to have my backend be Django. But then this is where I made the same old mistake I usually make. Is I said, okay, well, and I was a little inspired by you. I said, I want to be able to have like a mobile app too, like a nice like native mobile app. So I was like, well, I might as well just, Brad's talking about React Native. I don't need to know React. Like I can just see how easy it is for Chat GPT to like give me
Hmm.
the code base to set this up. So long story short, I went with the Django REST framework is like a Django library, which is basically turns your database into like an API. So like basically
Hmm.
it's like a database. You have like serializers, and then you can just make like API calls with like a front end like React using like Axios. And so I had the back end all set up, no problem. Like I know Django decently well, and then I get to React, and because my thought was like if I just make it in React, then it'll be really easy to go React Native, and then it's basically the same code base. I asked like Chat GPT that question, so I don't know if it was like actually true or not, but it basically I was
Uh-huh.
like, hey, if I just make something in React, like is it really easy to make it like a mobile app with React Native? And it was like, oh yeah, it's definitely easy. Like blah blah blah. It gave me like an AI answer. So I was like, okay, so we'll try that. It just could not work. I had the front end folder, had like the components set up with like the router,
Hmm.
and just could not get it to work. And I
Yeah.
kind of went into it like knowing I'm like, let's see how well this works. I wanted to kind of like I wasn't like pinning all my hopes on that, but I was like, let me see how far it would get. And I think two things, and I'll pause there because I know you probably have a couple comments, but the two things that I noticed in just doing that exercise alone is one, there's probably prompt engineering things that I'm not doing that I could do better for sure.
Hmm.
And I think my takeaway is like to try and narrow it into smaller steps because it kind of would like
Hmm.
just give me the whole thing. And it's like, well, that doesn't really, it just doesn't plug and play like that. But then two, it was not giving me like any like tests. And like test driven development or whatever, I think is like a philosophy that people, really stick to, or they don't really think that's that important. But like for me, again, as like a non technical person, I really wanted to see like, okay, does this part that we just so far, like, does this part work? Because I don't want to get all the way down this path and have something not work that we did, 10 minutes ago. You know what I mean? Like, I want to
Hmm.
kind of like sequentially, okay, you're telling me I need to put this in this folder and then hook up this router over here. If I just do that, does it work? Because I felt like it was trying to get me all the way to the end result, and then something would go wrong, but it wasn't really clear where things broke. So that was like my experience. But I'll pause there because there is more. But like, what do you think so far? Like, what
I
is
think,
that?
yeah, my first reaction is wow, because if anybody knows Ben, the JavaScript and him do not work very well together. And to jump
Mhm.
ship to React, the leading JavaScript web framework, and React Native, it's a big step. And exactly as you mentioned, being familiar with the one thing is really powerful. For me, you're using Django and Python. I use Laravel and PHP, so that gets me that domain is satisfied and easy to work with. The front end, I've historically done HTML and CSS raw, and then I switched to Vue because Laravel kind of picked that up and pushed it in their ecosystem. React has now pretty much been the dominant force the past few years. So much stuff is built on top of React, including React Native, which is a huge win if you need it. So I think my first impression is I'm proud that you went that route. However, I know it's bumpy and bruisey for someone who's not familiar with the tooling, because I think the comments that I hear from you historically was it's not that easy to build a website given all the amount of tools that need to be scaffolded for you to become productive in the beginning. Because when you're working on a Django web app, it's very simple. Like you install a package, boot up your server, and you're writing code. React Native, all these things are multi-layered systems that all run locally, and their configuration can be extremely complex and time-consuming. And just like if you're not familiar with it, it's a huge pain. So I think my first reaction is I applaud you for going down that route. And my second reaction is exactly as you mentioned with the querying AI in terms of fine-grained updates versus tackling a larger project. I think it's exactly right. I've also been toiling with how to approach AI in ways that make sense for building my apps like on nights and weekends. And one approach to that I've been trying to do is to distill the context of my project into a generic prompt, which gives like the high level context. And then for the problem at hand, I describe another section to the AI that says, this is the task I want to do in this system. And so I think a few weeks ago, I won't go too deep into it, but I wrote maybe, I don't know, 900 words describing Split My Expenses as a bill splitting app. You can think of it as Splitwise. And I only say that because Splitwise is much more indexed in the AI world, not necessarily that I'm an exact copy, but more they understand what that means. Then I describe my database schema. So what are my main tables look like in MySQL? I give it sample test data rows. So on my local machine, I can spin up the database and like seed fake data into it, because that gives it a feeling of what's actually in there. You can say, an expense has an amount and that's an integer, but usually for expenses it's like below $10,000 that people are splitting, so it gives you that extra behavior. So I described like the overall Laravel, PHP, Vue.js, these are the technologies, this is my database schema, these are the main features. And then after that I have like, this is the feature that I'm working on, here's the code that I have, please help improve this given the system constraints. So I would recommend that for you. I think that would be a good way to approach it. I think the prompt engineering stuff is actually extremely difficult, and historically people have said it's going away, but using models like O1 Pro, it almost feels like it's even more important to say the right things. Like they're smart as
Mhm.
hell, but if you give anyone a generic task of like, make me a React Native app, even the top engineer at any company will be like, well, there's so many different pieces in that. I don't know how to succeed given you haven't given me enough info.
Mhm.
So I think that those are my thoughts. And I think React to React Native, I'll touch on that last, is useful, but I don't think it's as easy as it might sound from just the naming of those two projects. Like React, you're building HTML and CSS. React Native, you're using different components. So in React, you'd use a div or a p tag or a span tag. In React Native, you're using like a text or a label and like an image tag. They're just different, and they have different constraints and different libraries. Where I see React Native shine is it gives you an opportunity to write shared code for 80%. So like maybe your data management layer is shared, but that other 20% of making good UI on both iOS and Android is still really
Mhm.
freaking hard. Like it's not easy to ship something that feels good. So I
Yeah.
think in your case, you would definitely win with shared data processing, but the UI is still like going to be really challenging.
Yeah. And I think, one thing that I noticed it was doing was it was like adding all these features. Like I would tell it like this is what I'm trying to make, and it would like go ahead and start like adding a bunch of stuff. Again, because again it kind of went to try and get all the way to the end solution when it's like,
Hmm.
in my experience, just building little projects here and there, it's like you kind of, and I don't know if you'd feel the same way, but like you kind of like work on an individual piece first. Okay, I'm gonna get
Yeah,
like the
like chip
login
away at it.
authentication. Yeah, like I'm gonna get authentication done here, and I'm gonna go do, you know, user management over here. And like
Hmm.
but it would just try and get everything done in one, and then like add things I didn't really want or like wasn't ready to add. I was like, I just want to get like an MVP kind of idea going. But it was like, let's also have it be able to do these things too. And it's like, no. So I had like when my prompt engineering, I was like, stop like telling me what I need to do. I'm just gonna like just only do this,
Yeah.
So, but it goes to show, I think we've talked a lot and people talk a lot about, like certain things going away because of AI. And like, certainly there is potential for that to happen, but like, it's just not there because,
Yeah.
even like, I'm pretty familiar with Django, and there's a really good authentication library that like, people just use. Like, it's very like standard. And it didn't push me to use that. It was like, oh, let's handle authentication, and it was a bit more like bare bones. And I was like,
Mhm.
why? I was like, why don't you just use I can't remember. I think it's called Django All Auth, like ALL auth.
That's the good one.
And yeah. I mean, last I checked, and that's what I've used in other projects, and it's really easy to set up. It has like built-in views and all that. So log in, reset password, confirm email, like all that kind of out of the box stuff. And it didn't use that, and I was like, why wouldn't you just use that? And it was like, oh, you're right, let's use that. Just like, okay, like why didn't you start with that? So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been good. I haven't been able to get, to kind of come back to the idea. Haven't been able to get back into it since the last thing I ended up happening is I just said scrap React. I don't care. Like it was just a cool thought, but like I'm just gonna just try and get like an MVP
Back to
up with
Bootstrap.
yeah exactly with Django and just get the functionality to work. So I was spending a bit of time with like Google text to speech library, and that's where I stopped and I got busy with other things. So when I come back to it,
Okay. I
that's all
gotta
me.
put on the bingo card getting Ben to use Laravel in 2025 because that would be a huge win. Then we can just hack on stuff together nights and weekends, and I can do a pull request into his repo on GitHub and fix some issues. Like Django, I can do it, but I'm not at home. And I think since I'm an engineer by trade, if we got him, if you're listening, maybe reach out over LinkedIn and give him a thumbs up to Laravel. But if we got him on Laravel, we could, jam on things together. I've been pushing it for a while, but yet to be his framework of choice.
They don't play nice on Windows. I don't care what people say. It doesn't play nice on Windows. So like I know that there's like Laravel Vapor or whatever it's called, or Laravel Sail with like Docker.
Well, yeah, sales Docker.
I get it, but like it don't play nice. I tried.
Okay,
So
here's my take. I'm going out to see Ben soon. Maybe I can go to his computer, get him set up with the premium Laravel developer experience on Windows that I've heard exists, although I can't confirm. After that, maybe in the next podcast episode, he'll change his mind. Or we could double down that it's not good on Windows, and I can reach out to Taylor and say, clean this up because I can't get my brother on it. We'll see. We'll see.
they say, oh, use the Windows subsystem for Linux.
Oh
or
yeah,
whatever.
WSL. Yeah. No, it's a no from you.
Not for me. Like not for me. It's not it for me. Again,
I did tell Ben, like he told me he was working on this. He's like, hey, I'm like starting to commit to my repo, and the first thing I say is Laravel and a MacBook. I say that's your starting point, but he didn't like that one.
I'm a PC guy. I got my laptop right here. I'm on my PC right now. Got my laptop.
It's good for
right
gaming.
Here.
It's good for gaming.
Well, it's good for business. It's good for
Maybe.
business. Mac, it's just look. I have a Mac.
It's the supreme
my
developer experience.
For now.
Yeah. And to tie that one off, I think exactly as you mentioned, for you as someone who is technical, like you've deployed Django apps to the World Wide Web, you've done with you've dealt with libraries, you've done Python, Excel. Not to say your skills aren't good, but even with the help of AI, like things are still hard. I think there's this general consensus in the software engineering space, especially on Twitter. Every week there's a new AI model that comes out that does pretty damn well and maybe is pretty cheap. Like software engineering is over. I went to college and got a computer science degree. I've worked for the past 7 to 8 years building mobile apps and websites. I don't think we're there yet. Like, yes, these models are getting a lot better, but you'd almost think like this is a good litmus test for, Ben, who's someone who is technical. Can he build like a React Native mobile app without running into any hurdles? Because I think the day that software engineers are gone, or the day that you can get to exactly where you want to go without running into hurdle after hurdle. And I think React and the complexity of building a solid web app with good foundations is already hard. And then to make it even better is like way harder. Like you could probably get off the ground spending a ton of time prompt engineering to get the right solution. But I almost guarantee you, whatever comes out of that, you'll be like, this is good, but not great. Like there's the existence of apps in the good space on the App Store and websites that exist in it's like an MVP, it's shippable. But those ones like Airbnb, the Netflix app, like Stripe, the ones that really wow you, like no AI right now can do that. And the second that that is at a click of a button, I'd be a little bit scared. But even then, tying pieces together, like you mentioned, where AI will just go down rabbit holes and like doesn't think holistically about the big picture.
Hmm.
Once we get those two components where it's able to execute at a high level and a low level and tie it back, and it's able to innovate in ways that it can mimic modern UI design and be transformative to create new experiences that we haven't seen before that are better,
Hmm.
that's a challenging point, but we're far away from that. And I think this is a good like understanding that yes, it's helpful, but you need to guide it. It's like an intern or like, you know, a new college grad. They're skilled, but they need a little bit of direction. I think that's where AI exists today.
Yeah. And it's also too, like, at least in the stage right now, it's like you might tell like someone, like, I guess the idea is that like people would just be able to write their own software just because they want something, just any
Hmm.
random person. But it's also like you don't know how to do that. And sure, like maybe the AI might, but like there's so many questions as you go about building something. Like again, just with this like call thing, it's like I want someone to call me at certain times and talk to me. It's like, okay, like what are you gonna do? You're gonna use Twilio?
Yeah.
Like how, like have you thought about what that's gonna cost you? Google text to speech. Like there's so many different design decisions that the AI would have to decipher and choose from. And, one, we've already talked about how it doesn't like take easy wins, like the all auth library. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't. And then two, like I saw, I think Ben Affleck, the actor, was talking about AI like taking over movies, like and making its own movies. Like people are only going to see movies that are made by robots and not be,
Hmm.
the Spielberg eras are kind of over. And he had a good point, and you could tell he thought a lot about this in his response, because he basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, art and like building something is like also knowing when to stop, and like and knowing when
Hmm.
something's finished. And he's like, he was much more adamant, but he was just like, AI is not going to know when to stop, like to
Yeah.
step back from like the Sistine Chapel and say, okay, this is enough, like this is
Hmm.
it. Like when Da Vinci was painting the Mona Lisa, when he stepped back and was like, okay, I'm done. Like he's like, AI is not going to be able to do that. And like, it. So that one point, I think it's a good point, because it's just like there's so many different decisions that go into it. And it's like people, one, they don't really know all that goes on when they just say, oh, I want a software that does X. There's a bunch of different design decisions that go into place. And then two, I think a little bit of like Steve Jobs, where I think I don't know if this was like actually should be attributed to him, but I feel like he would say that like people don't know what they want. Like you need to show them what they want, and it's
Yeah.
like, and so yeah, maybe people might want software that does something, and they might just think of it, and maybe one day they'll be able to just say, oh, I want, the software that does this, and they can just write it themselves. But like people, I just don't think it's gonna work like that. I think they're gonna just rather have
Yeah.
something be built for them, and not have to worry about like making it themselves.
Yeah, I've seen a tweet recently that crystallizes that, and it was saying, yes, you can get software written for you by AI, and it might work, but maintaining that, running that on a server, all that complexity and like uptime and making sure it doesn't break, and then adding features to it over time and choosing the right technologies, like you mentioned, that is like almost the harder part. Like, yes, anyone can I can ask AI to write me Python code that transforms like an Excel sheet or goes to large extents to manipulate local data. But what if you want large scale data? What if you need privacy? Maybe you could go pretty far with that, but like it's hard to get it the last mile of, having it continuously running and be supported and not break. And I think when you pay for things like a task tracking system like Linear, Jira, all these kind of products that seem easy, like a to-do list online, yeah, anyone could ask ChatGPT or Claude or any of these models to make a to-do list app locally. But like having all these integrations and other features and making sure it doesn't break, making sure you can access it, outside your home network, like good luck with getting AI to do all of that for you. Like it's just not there yet. So I think we're getting close. There's new models that are popping up, and we'll probably talk more about them, but it's not at a point yet where I'm concerned. I think there's been so much hysteria online that it's almost like a little bit negative and just like annoying almost at a certain point, where every new model that pops up, we say, this is it. Pack your bags, we're done here. And it's just not like that. And so I can tell you here, at least in January 2025, I'm not concerned. I'm more than ever excited about the progress, and I think it's only going to keep getting better. And I'm trying to use these tools as much as I can. I don't want to be left behind. I try to lean on it pretty heavily. It's almost kind of like I use Google Maps when I am navigating in my own neighborhood. I know where things are, but I like seeing a time. I like seeing a route. I like seeing the optimal route. Maybe it's not the same route I used to take. And it's like, yeah, do I rely on Google Maps? Sure. Like, could I have a better mental map? Sure. And I think the same thing exists for AI where I can do all these things manually, but if there's a workflow for AI that I can give it to it and it can do a 90% job, 95% job, I'm going to lean on that. Like, I'm not going to go do it manually anymore because I think it's only going to get better and better and handle more complicated tasks. And my job, at least as an engineer building these like local workflows, is getting at the data it needs in that context. And exactly as you describe it, where you need to really have a high level plan in place. So you're directing. It's not innovating in ways that you're not able to explain. You're able to like tell you want innovation in this area and this is your long-term direction and just solve one thing for me. So that's what I've been trying to do recently is one, use the latest models, two, distill workflows down to AI in which I get the maximum value out of it by reducing the amount of manual labor I do, but it's well defined in an area that's not like super complicated. Again, I a mini update from last podcast is I did subscribe to O1 Pro, which is $200 a month. Again, we talked every AI tool right now is $20. Claude, OpenAI's ChatGPT Plus, I think is 20. Google Gemini is 20. Everything you can imagine is $20 to have the user experience to chat something that with high intelligence. I went down the rabbit hole for O1 Pro thinking, what can it do for me and how can I leverage like the quote unquote smartest model from OpenAI? Because when you think about it, I feel like I'm solving decently hard problems with split my expenses. Like there's areas where I need to really think. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I need 4 to 5 hours to work on something. And the current example that I'm doing is currency conversion. Just complicated to get right. I want it to be 100% right. And I haven't done it yet, but I need to throw O1 Pro at it. I've thrown O1 Pro at different features. Like, for example, recently I upgraded some of my activity log code. An activity log, for people who aren't familiar with SME, is it just tracks what happens in the system so that if your friend adds 5 expenses and then deletes 3 of them, and you get these notifications, you can kind of see what happened over time. And I needed AI to add more UI for a new activity log type. And what I did is I gave O1 Pro the context of my file. So like my Vue front end code, my Laravel backend code. And I said, this is my system. Again, using that prompt that I described earlier, outlining the full core tables. Then I defined the feature that I wanted. And it did pretty well. I use a tool called Repo Prompt, which I'll go into later, but essentially I use Repo Prompt with O1 Pro, and the final result wasn't exactly one shot. And one shot is kind of the essence of you give it a query, it produces code, and that code works flawlessly without any errors, whether that be syntax or logic errors. I think when I applied my code from O1 Pro, I think it had like an import error or two, and then like 1 or 2 logic errors, but otherwise it's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's necessarily worth it, but they've also came out with operators. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's super cool. OpenAI shipped both operators and scheduled tasks recently, which we should touch on. But overall, my O1 Pro reporting it's good. I need to try it a little bit more, push it to its limits. I'm currently paying $200 and my timeline is running out for my 200. So probably in the next week or so, I'm just going to throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's if I had that subscription and like the operator and scheduled task thing is huge. Like I mean like just cuz people want to be able to have something happen like on their behalf without them actually doing it, you know? Like the whole like make money while you sleep thing, right? Like that's why that's so repeated. And so but the fact that something can occur without you like physically manning it is I think a huge feature as a whole that people are really looking forward to. So like that definitely, makes the subscription worthwhile, or at least an interesting endeavor. But if at that price, I'd be like, I need to use this a lot to get my money's worth. Like I would be
Yeah.
like, like making sure I get like spend a lot of time in it to justify that. But I'm sorry if I missed this, but is the operator only part of the premium subscription? Is that
Yeah,
kind of
so
okay?
Operator is on their Pro tier, which is the $200. The Plus tier has only O1, but not O1 Pro. So O1 Pro is like their, highest intelligence, takes a while. It's the thinking AI model. And I think scheduled tasks comes out for everybody. So I'm not super sure. I'll have to take a look at it, but I think it's for all chat GPT users. Maybe there's a limit on like how many tasks you can schedule and the frequency. But I think
Yeah.
overall operators is out now, only available for pro users because I think that's limited and new, and that's kind of their way to roll it out in like a safe manner. And scheduled tasks is you can schedule anything to happen on the ChatGPT platform, and it'll notify you and like give you information that you requested. And I think that combined with like web search, decent intelligence, it's interesting. I haven't found a ton of cool use cases yet, but on Twitter, I'm kind of like waiting for these, people who make these threads on AI to come up with some cool use cases. But I did try Operator. And what I tried it to do is my first query was give me the best bill splitting web app. So as someone who makes one in the space, I thought, people are typing this into Google. Let's see how it evaluates bill splitting web apps today. And what it did is it did that exact query, like best bill splitting web apps. I think it clicked on the top 3 links and it scanned the web page. So for those unfamiliar with Operator, it's essentially a chat interface on your left side and a web browser on your right side. And this is within your own web browser. So the web browser that you see is a video that's streamed in of OpenAI controlling a web browser. And so you can see it go in and search Google. You can see it scroll through the web page and it opens up multiple tabs. So it's just like a normal Google Chrome browser. And at the end of looking at like 3 articles, it was like, hey, Splitwise is looking like the best, web tool. And in my head, I was just crying. I was like, I paid $200 and this thing told me it's not even me. And so
It's
then
a
I asked it,
diss.
I said, what about Split My Expenses? I heard that one's up and coming. And it did more Google searches. It found my product hunt launch, I think from 2023, and said, hey, SME looks pretty good and users like it. Then I thought, okay, like what else can I do? Like that's just reading Google. It's not that hard. So then I asked it, can you please sign up on Split My Expenses, like create an account? And I thought, like, what is it going to do? Like, does it have access to like an email account or whatnot? So it first off told me I am not allowed to sign up to any services. So I thought, okay, OpenAI clearly does their due diligence on like, I don't know, maybe malicious behavior. One could say you could use Operator to do a bunch of sketchy stuff and like deem it was OpenAI. So it first told me that, and I said, okay, like, can you at least walk me through it? And so what it did is it went to the sign up page and was like, this is where you'd fill out your information. I thought that's kind of useless. But what I looked on their docs is you can actually take over the web browser. So what this means is, say if you have a complicated workflow where you log into Google Drive, then you log into YouTube. For example, we upload our podcast and we use 4 or 5 different websites. What Operator can do is you can log into each of your accounts on its own Chrome web browser that's remote because you can take control of it. After that, you can tell OpenAI what you just did. So when you take control, then you release control, it says, what did you just do? And you describe, I went to transistor.fm, our podcasting site. I went to Riverside FM, our podcasting site, logged into my admin accounts. Then you could describe a workflow in which we use multiple tools to coordinate and clean up our podcast and upload it. And it seems pretty cool because I think it can resume, like on a new Operator chat, it can pull out your already logged in accounts. So you can imagine this is actually how you get the maximum value out of it. I really got little to no value of asking it to Google search for me or try to sign up to my site. But what I want to try next is giving it my like credentials into various systems that aren't super sensitive. Like I don't think I'd give it my bank account login. I'm pretty sure it'd probably block it. And I think I've seen some sites recently that if you try to ask it to search YouTube, for example, it's blocked unless you log in. And I think OpenAI worked with these websites to say, like, this is the Operator web browser. So like you can identify it and see it on YouTube's or like Reddit side. I think Reddit is also login only so that people need to be authenticated in these systems. But overall, super cool. I'll probably report back by the next pod of giving my credentials to a deeper system and then seeing if Operator can do something meaningful out of it. Our friend Justin Anderson has been posting on LinkedIn about doing a little bit of that. I think he logged in with his Google Drive and like just made some mock spreadsheets and is doing some coordination between different spreadsheets, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's in the accounting industry like myself, so
Shout
it's
out.
cool. He's got some good content out there, and it's I like it because it looks super practical. Like it's not just like, I feel like a lot of I guess I don't say like YouTubers, but like a lot of people just take like the textbook use case and they all just do the same use case of like a to-do list. Like everyone has a to-do
Mm-hmm.
list, tutorial, like if they're like talking about React or whatever. But Justin's content seems very like specifically curated to accounting of like, hey, I'm taking, I think he had like expense like receipt categorization that took it from a PDF and put it on a Google Sheet and then categorized it. Like just very useful and practical, which I think has, is what distincts content from, generic content, So
Mhm.
yeah, shout out to him. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's cool seeing people make content with AI because there's so many different use cases. Like the ones I think of are engineering, but for the accounting side, like seeing your guys' point of view with the tools at hand, like I wouldn't even
Mhm.
think of some of that because my day to day is not doing some of that or overseeing some of that. But my day to day is doing other stuff like in Python or iOS or web, and I'm like, how can I speed up my workflow? So really cool to see Justin doing that.
One thing that we're gonna clip right here for the audience here. What Brad just said is he says he's doing something in Python. So why would he need to convince me to go to Laravel when Django is in Python and he knows Python? There it is. That's it
I'll
right there.
fess up. There are plenty of things that I automate in my life that I use Python, and that is because Python is widely understood and it's very easy to run. You don't write any local PHP scripts for automation, and use Python. So Python has its place. I just Laravel and PHP are just king in
Mhm.
web development. Ruby on Rails is great too. You got Laravel and you got Roar. Django is definitely a second class citizen, although it does the job at times.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I know we got lots of other cool stuff to chat about. But the fact that you said that, Ruby on Rails, Laravel, Python being the most widely used language, it's weird that they don't have like a real dominant like web framework. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Flask is there. I think that's probably, I don't know the stats, but I guess like Flask or Django is probably the top one. And then I think Fast API is like good just for getting a APIs up, obviously. Um,
hmm
but they don't have like a Laravel. They don't have a Ruby on Rails. They don't have. I'm just trying to think of other like web frameworks, like a React with Node.
Yeah, Next.js or any of those.
Yeah, it's interesting. But anywho, yeah,
Yeah, someone will make
cool.
it. If anything, they have a good example to follow with Ruby on Rails and Laravel. So it's just a matter of time if people care about it. But I mostly see Python used for local scripts,
Hmm.
and automation, and then machine learning. So I think that's kind of where everyone's focus is, at least in that area.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool.
Cool.
Um, One thing that we had on the list here that I really wanted to kind of hear you speak about was Olama plus Open Web UI, because I think we had talked about it, either it was on the podcast or just I think I maybe sent you a video a couple months ago about Open Web UI, but I never was able to really like get into it just for lack of time. Um, but what are you seeing now with that, with some of the new developments that have come out recently?
Yeah, so DeepSeek R1 is the newest AI model. I think it came out of China. And I'll be honest, I haven't read like the research paper or anything, but the TLDR is it has on par performance in lots of various categories like coding, mathematics, logic, arithmetic, all that sort of thing, with OpenAI's O1 model. So again, I pay for O1 Pro, which is technically better, but DeepSeek R1 is on par with OpenAI's O1 model, and I think it's 96% cheaper. So you're getting high intelligence at a fraction of the cost, and it's open source. So this means I can download this model and run it locally on my own MacBook. But again, for people who are familiar with AI and machine learning models, the model that they are running on a large GPU is much more powerful than the model that I can run on my local computer because you need, I think their biggest model is like 405 billion parameters. And like, I don't know what the exact translation is, but you can imagine you need lots and lots of RAM, gigabytes of RAM to run that. So maybe like 400, 500 gigabytes of RAM to run it. I don't know if that's right. Don't quote me on that. But at the end of the day, this new model came out from this company in China. It's extremely powerful and on par with OpenAI's closed source model, and it's 96% cheaper. So this is a huge deal. And then I wanted to run this model, and my Twitter feed, if I pull up my Twitter right now as we're speaking, probably 6 out of 10 tweets in my top 10 on my For You page would just people saying, "Oh my God, DeepSeek R1, incredible. Research team, incredible. The vibes." So if you're not in the AI space, they talk a lot about vibes, which is one of those things that's hard to put your finger on, but it does what you need to do in the right way. And its scale and compute and all these factors make it really, really attractive. So Meta comes out with Llama, which is their open source kind of behemoth of a model, and they're kind of laughing online right now because DeepSeek R1 like leapfrogs Llama, because Llama was pretty good and cost a lot of money from Meta. And DeepSeek R1, the biggest thing that they came out with was a highly intelligent model that's cheap. And their training, they supposedly trained it, I think, on like $50 million. I don't know if that's the exact price, but it was extremely cheap. So coming out with frontier model intelligence, and the training cost of building the model is 50 million, and it's cheap to run, is like a huge combination of wins, and it's open source. It's like an absolute game changer. There's tons of people on Twitter that are saying this is like a pinnacle of engineering and research. And now that this is open source, a bunch of other new stuff will come out in 3 to 6 months that are going to like make this even better. So that was a long tangent, but TLDR is DeepSeek R1 brought me into how do I run this at home, because this is a really good model. So I usually use Claude Sonnet, which is the best coding model. DeepSeek R1 is supposedly better in some areas. So I was like, all right, I'm going to use Ollama. And so we talked about it on the podcast before, but Ollama is a way to essentially download models and run them on your local computer in an optimized way. And the DeepSeek R1 original model is like 405 billion parameters, and that takes up 400 gigs of RAM. What I'm running at home is either their, I think, 30 billion parameter model, which is like roughly 30 gigabytes of RAM, or I think they have a 60 gigabyte model, which is, roughly 60 billion parameters, which is roughly 60 gigabytes of RAM. So I use Ollama to download the model. So you say like Ollama run, and then the model name, which I think is like DeepSeek -R1 colon like the size, which is 30 or 60 or 7 or 405. That's great. Ollama gives you a command line interface. This means on your terminal on your Mac, you can type in anything. It's like good, but not great. Like, working with ChatGPT or any modern chat interface has like code formatting for text. You can like copy blocks of code that it outputs, all these things. So I was like, how do I get a better interface? And I was looking around, especially on my Twitter right now, tons of people are talking about it. You even mentioned it. Open Web UI. It's honestly a clone of ChatGPT's interface, but open source. So it's like a normal chat interface. You get your chat bubble. It's probably written in React. It allows you to like upload images, like anything in the modern day for a chat interface, but it's all free and open source. It's incredible. And it hooks into Ollama. So OpenWebUI is just a website you run on localhost, like localhost port 3000. It then sends your query to Ollama's running model on your computer. So you get a fully offline and local feedback loop with a high intelligence model. And it was just mind blowing. Like, I couldn't believe that I could get this set up within 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes probably includes like the long download time for the DeepSeek model. But literally what you have to do is install Ollama, run one command to download the DeepSeek R1 30 billion or 70 billion parameter model. That is like a 40 gigabyte to 20 gigabyte download. Then you run one command, which uses Docker, which Docker is complicated. But if you go to OpenWebUI's README on GitHub, there's a, hey, if you use OpenWebUI and want to use Ollama, and Ollama's already running on your computer, copy and paste this one Docker command. It'll then, run the OpenWebUI locally and connect to Ollama. And I thought, this is going to be like a huge pain in the ass, but, I'm going to go down this route. Literally one command, it was up and running, went to localhost. It automatically detected that I had the DeepSeek R1 model installed. And I was like off to the races with a extremely high functional chat interface. And it's all running locally. So I could give it like literally my personal information. I don't really know on the full security. I'm like 99.99% sure it's safe. And there's no like leak in OpenWebUI's code or Ollama's code or the model that it's running. Like, those are the three pieces of software that coordinate it all. But I could literally give it like my finances for Bucksbyte or like any other personal information and ask for advice. Or if I'm chatting with Claude, chatting with ChatGPT, yes, they don't like always train on your data, but I wouldn't tell it like my social security number, for example. Not that I am, but that just gives you the context of which there's literally no internet connection that's going out there. And so, yeah, it was a very interesting setup and felt extremely high class. And I think Ollama and OpenWebUI are a good foundation, and DeepSeek makes it extremely valuable to plug into that system and have high intelligence locally on your computer. So, long story short, an extremely cool setup. I think everyone should try it. If you have a MacBook, if you have 64 gigs of RAM, I know it's kind of a lot, but try it out and let me know what you think. Run like the 30 billion parameter model, and it's pretty damn good. I was blown away.
Yeah, I saw it a couple months ago from a YouTube channel called Network Chuck, and he makes pretty entertaining videos. He's definitely and he discloses he like promotes, you know, products. Obviously, it's making a living, right? So,
Hmm.
but he had it the way he set it up, and I was like, that's a great idea. Is he, you know, used llama, like, so that model, you know, so
Yeah.
this was pre DeepSeek, this a couple months ago. So he was using llama, and he basically, his use was like, for my kids when they're doing their homework, like, I want them to be able to ask like for help, like tutoring essentially. But I want to be like to control like what they can like get information from. You know, obviously,
Mm.
just of course, as parents, you want to make sure your kids are getting the right information, not seeing things they shouldn't. And so he had to set it up around that, which was pretty cool. And then I think he was using, I have to go back and look at the video, but I think he was using like maybe one of those NAS. I think it's like a local server. I can't remember exactly, but I have to go back and look at that video now because I'm curious what he ended up doing with it. But yeah, I mean, it was cool. You could like drop down, pick which model you want to use. I think you could even use more than one in certain cases. But then he like, you know, using Llama, he like kind of configured a model file that was like specifically instructed to like not just give the kids the answer, like, you know,
Well, that's cool.
explain something, like lead them to it, you know, and kind of act as like a
Like a
teacher more than
tutor.
just, yeah, exactly. So you know, because I remember using Wolfram Alpha back in college,
Oh yeah.
and it would give you like
So good.
the theory behind like but I was like, I just want the answer, buddy. You know, so thanks for all the
Yeah,
theory, but
yeah.
I just want the answer. So yeah, we'll link that video because it's a good video. He does a good job with his videos and like editing and all that. And it kind of gives people a visual to like open web UI if they don't, you know, want to check it out themselves, because it seems like a pretty cool tool.
Yeah, it has all the bells and whistles. It has text to speech, speech to text, live conversations. So ChatGPT came out with that in December last year. Like it even has RAG, retrieval augmented generation, so you can connect it with your Google Drive and it can pull in documents. Like it's honestly pretty incredible, and I haven't configured it to my likings just yet. Like you mentioned with controlling the AI's behavior, you can put like a global prompt in and say, like, if I'm querying Llama, include this prompt. And he's probably writing, like, you know, you're a teacher, you're teaching kids under the age of blah. Like, they are very curious, but don't give them the answer. Like, almost the prompt engineering behind the hood. And then the kids will just access the open web UI interface. And it looks like ChatGPT, honestly, exactly the same. But you'd have to do a bit more effort to like expose it to your local network, like you mentioned, setting up some at-home server and such. Yeah, super cool. I imagine it's only going to get a lot better as we move forward. Like we have the foundation of the web UI plus a model runner. Now we're just getting better models to come in and feed them. So it's like a very exciting time, and I can't wait to see what comes out of DeepSeek's impressive model release. That I think people are really excited right now. In the past like just few days it came out, so if you're not aware, definitely check it out. It literally takes 5 minutes if you have a MacBook to download a Llama, download Open Web UI, and run it through Docker. Literally download DeepSeek, and yeah, check it out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, should we get into bookmarks, Brad? I know we're come up on an hour here. I figure we got
Yeah,
some stuff that we can chat about with the bookmark section.
yeah, you lead us today.
Okay, all right. My first one is actually, well, I will include the video we're just talking about. So it's host all your AI locally is the title of that video. So I will include that.
Love that.
And that was 8 months ago, so he was pretty early on it, at least from what I know. But the video I linked in my bookmark section was actually not AI related at all. It's accounting, and it's from an individual named Logan Graff, who, full disclosure, he runs a community for accountants that I'm a part of as of last month. But he's a solo firm owner, a CPA firm owner that specializes in taxes. And he's been really great about putting out like, I don't want to say he's like building in public, you know, because it's an accounting firm, but he's very transparent about like running his own CPA firm, you know, how he got started, you know, what his routine is, and like how he gets clients. Like he's just kind of an open book, which everyone appreciates. And so he's been doing a series, I think, since 2021, where he discloses how much he made as a CPA firm owner, and you know, the video quality is always really good, and he gives a full breakdown of like his costs, how much revenue, like, you know, based on what, like how much of it was tax revenue, how much of it was like community revenue. So he just put out 2 days ago his how much money he made in 2024 as a fourth year CPA firm owner.
And what was your reaction? Like, how much was it, if you remember, and were you
Yeah, I
excited
have.
or?
It's super cool. Yeah, I think he was around 280,000 dollars.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I want to.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's and he works for himself. I can't remember exactly what his
Oh, okay. So
hours
it's
were,
not a
but
side gig. It's a full-time thing.
no, no, yeah, full
Okay.
time thing. And let's see, I'm gonna have the video up right here. It was 262,000. So last year he made
Nice.
283. And I remember last year he was saying he felt like he worked too much. So it's probably
Okay.
I haven't watched the full video yet, but I'm sure he's probably saying took less clients and wanted to work on running the community. So that's probably why that number is a little bit lower. But again, as a solo firm owner, I think he's got like one employee that just helps him with like part-time stuff.
Hmm.
That's all take-home pay essentially, minus his
That's cool.
expenses. But
I applaud anyone who's doing build in public and even like revenue numbers in public. That takes a lot of
mhm.
guts. And I think as a viewer, I'm fascinated to see real like data that is usually not shared. And then I'm impressed at like people's grit to push through even through hard times. Sometimes it's you're sharing data that's not super sexy or exciting. Like maybe that number for him is disappointing. Maybe it's great. Who's to know? But not enough people share that. And I think people, more people should.
Yeah, it's especially because I think accounting is a bit more of a closed book than like tech is, and it's rare in my experience to see people be so forthcoming about like what it's like to run a firm.
Hmm.
Especially because accounting, you're serving clients, right? So it's people go, oh, I don't know if I want my clients to know how much money I make, because they're going to say, oh,
Yeah.
you're overcharging me, which is like such an antiquated way to think. So it's cool to see people like Logan, like that are brave enough to kind of put that out there, and face judgment, face ridicule. I'm sure I doubt
Yeah.
he cares at all, but it does take some. Um, you got to just not worry about it, and just know that people are
Hmm.
appreciating. There's people out there that are appreciating what you're doing, and that makes it all worth it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll link it in the show notes for my bookmark, and yeah, I'm excited to kind of finish that video. I haven't finished it yet.
Nice, that's cool. Well, mine is not as exciting. One thing I found on Twitter recently was there's a guy, Ryan Vogel. I've seen his name somewhere. He must be involved in some JavaScript community, like maybe a package maintainer of sorts. I apologize, Ryan, if you're listening and you make some cool stuff that I use, but he posted a video on Twitter the other day that was highlighting a Chrome extension. And the Chrome extension allows you to essentially craft your resume with AI by looking at the job description on the web page. So you can imagine if you open up your browser and you're looking at a LinkedIn job posting, there's a right panel that hovers and allows you to select the job title. So you do this with your cursor, which is pretty cool. You click on job title in his extension, and then you click on where that job title exists on the page. That will then extract out the data. Then you choose job description, and then you choose company name. So it probably takes you, in his walkthrough, like 15 or 20 seconds to identify key pieces of information that, what is the job title, because those are the skills. Job description also outlines skills and responsibilities, and then company name so you can tailor it. And then once you have all those pieces selected in this Chrome extension, you click like process, and this button will take a look at your resume, modify it to kind of fit the skills that they're looking for, and generate an updated resume and an updated cover letter. And so you could apply to a job using AI, I don't know, 30 or 45 seconds. And yeah, it's probably not perfect. And I think AI models are getting there where they can manipulate your resume content to make it sound better in a certain angle, which for software engineering, you can be a mobile app developer, which kind of is my role. You can be a web app developer. You can be like a low level systems programmer, like working on gas stations or cars or all these different things. And from people who aren't familiar with the software engineering space, that can all feel like one. But when you get down there, just like any specialty, there's so much difference in nuance and skills required in each of these fields. So if you are applying to a job, I don't know if he's actually posted this publicly, but if he does release it, it seems like it'd be a good way to get a head start on crafting your resume correctly, because the whole job market's pretty competitive right now, and any edge you can get in, one, applying to more places because this would speed it up, and two, having your resume crafted to kind of solve their story of the candidate that they're looking for, I could see be a big win. And it kind of reminds me of LinkedIn's Easy Apply, where they give you one button and it submits your resume. This is like crafting a resume and helping you submit. It doesn't go that far, but it seems quite valuable to have something like this, as long as the AI model was good enough. So if you're job searching and Ryan puts it out there, I'll definitely follow up on the next pod. But a cool video that I'll link nonetheless of a cool interaction with a Chrome extension. I've also thought about doing something with SME where you can log into like Chase, you can have my Chrome extension, you could click on like an expense and like auto import it into my system. And seeing his Chrome extension really gave me an idea of this could be possible, but I don't think people love Chrome extensions to be able to like read data on your screen, like access the web pages. So I was like, I don't really know. TBD for that, but really cool video nonetheless, and a nice use case of AI and trying to stand out in the job market.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, to be honest with you. But cool that he built it. But yeah, I think people like the AI tools, like as someone who's hired in this era, yeah, you just know people are just like hitting the button and saying, okay, hopefully they call me back, But I get I'm not dissing the product. I'm sure it's cool, and for people that are applying with actual intent, I'm sure it helps them out. But for people that are just like,
don't spam apply.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's cool. Awesome. All right. Well, another good one in the books, Brad. Yeah, we will upload this and catch you next time.
Sounds good. All right. See ya.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, hope you liked that episode of the Breakeven Brothers podcast. To find more episodes, you can go to breakevenbrothers.com or find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Transistor FM. To connect with Brad, you can go to bradleybernard.com or at bradleybernard on X. And to connect with me, you can go to bennettbernard.com or at TheRealTechCPA on X. You can also find us both on LinkedIn. Thanks. See you next time.